Welcome back to the channel. If you're in a season where your inner world feels like it's falling apart, if someone shattered your trust, if the pain has lingered so long that you barely recognize who you are anymore, or if you're trying to rise from something you thought would destroy you, this video is for you. Today, we won't talk about escaping emotions. We won't sugarcoat life. And we certainly won't glorify victimhood. We'll walk straight into the fire, with clarity, with quiet strength, and with a commitment to this truth: we cannot change the past, but we can be reborn through it. Each section in this video is a pillar, designed to help you rebuild your inner immune system. From accepting pain, practicing powerful silence, to reclaiming your self-trust, every insight is meant to lead you back to one thing: your sovereignty. Watch until the end, not just to understand, but to apply. Because you are worthy of a version of yourself that is grounded, calm, and no longer breakable. Let's begin. Have you ever been hurt so deeply that you no longer wanted to trust anyone? Ever woken up in the middle of the night, not because of a nightmare, but because the emptiness inside you was so heavy it crushed your breath? No one tells you this: pain is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the silent initiation, where you are forced to walk forward on trembling legs with eyes that no longer see the world the same way. But in that exact moment, when everything feels like it's falling apart, when trust is suffocated and your kindness is buried, is also when you're standing at the edge of something sacred. Not a chance to be saved. A chance to see yourself clearly for the first time. No light is ever truly real unless it has shined through your brokenness. And no strength is ever truly deep unless it has been forged in your collapse. So if you are in pain, don't rush to escape it. Sit with it. Watch it like you would sit with a teacher, stern, silent, but offering you something no one else can: inner power. This is not a video to make you feel better. This is a video to make you stronger, at the roots, in the core. We begin where everything seems to fall apart. And from that very place, you will learn to rise, without applause, without validation. Just you. And the awakening that comes in silence. 1. The pain is the initiation. Pain is not your enemy. It is not a punishment, a flaw, or something to be eliminated. Pain is the initiation. It marks the beginning of your journey toward deep inner freedom, the kind of freedom no external circumstance can touch. And yet, most people spend their lives trying to escape it, mute it, or distract themselves from it. We have been conditioned to believe that the presence of pain means something has gone wrong. But what if pain is the most honest part of your life? When pain arrives, it doesn't lie. It doesn't sugarcoat. It doesn't entertain. It simply points, without mercy, to the exact spot inside you that needs attention. Something unresolved. Something ignored. Something forgotten. And in doing so, it calls you back to yourself. You can choose to run, to numb, to blame. Or you can choose to sit, to feel, and to see. The latter is harder. But it's the only path that leads to transformation. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Pain is not a brute force trying to destroy you. It is a messenger, urgent, unrelenting, and divine. It breaks through your noise and demands your presence. It interrupts the illusions you've built and asks you to strip down to what is real. It's not here to hurt you. It's here to wake you up. Pain, when seen clearly, is not just suffering, it is instruction. It reveals where your attachments are. It shows you what expectations are poisoning your peace. It illuminates the gap between your ideals and your actual capacity. This is sacred data. But only if you have the courage to look. If your first instinct is always to escape pain, you miss the map it's trying to give you. You forfeit your growth. You delay your freedom. Why do we fear pain so much? Because we have not been taught how to sit with it. We confuse it with weakness. We think feeling deeply makes us vulnerable to being broken. But in truth, what breaks us is not pain, it's our resistance to it. What consumes us is not the experience, but the refusal to experience it fully. You do not drown by being in deep waters. You drown when you stop breathing and thrash in panic. Stillness saves. Observation liberates. So what if, just for a moment, you stopped running? What if you allowed yourself to feel the full weight of your disappointment, your heartbreak, your grief? Not to indulge it. Not to dramatize it. But to witness it as it is. This is what the ancient sages meant when they spoke of knowing thyself. Not through ideas or opinions, but through direct, embodied awareness. There is no stronger foundation than this. To know where your pain lives. To know what triggers your fear. And to stand there without flinching. This is how sovereignty begins. Because once you see your pain without resistance, you reclaim your power over it. You stop being manipulated by it. You stop projecting it onto others. You stop demanding the world adjust so you don't have to feel discomfort. Instead, you become the space in which pain can arise, move, and dissolve, without owning you. That shift is not small. It is everything. It is the transition from unconscious survival to conscious strength. Pain as initiation means you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this here to teach me?" It's not spiritual bypassing. It's spiritual clarity. Every inner wound is a doorway. Every emotional trigger is a bell calling you inward. When something or someone causes you pain, ask, "What part of me is this touching?" What truth have I been avoiding that this pain is forcing me to face? These questions hurt, but they heal in ways comfort never could. Sometimes the pain says, you need better boundaries. Sometimes it says, you are betraying yourself for approval. Other times, it whispers, you're still carrying shame that isn't yours. Whatever it says, it speaks in raw truth. Not in judgment. Not in blame. But in deep, sacred honesty. Your job is not to argue with it. Your job is to listen. And then act, not from fear, but from clarity. This does not mean seeking pain. Stoicism is not masochism. It does not glorify suffering. It honors growth. And real growth only happens when we stop numbing the signals and start investigating their source. When we stop reacting from wounded patterns and start responding from present awareness. That's the discipline. To meet pain not with panic, but with presence. To pause. To breathe. To observe. To say, this too is part of me. And I will not turn away. Over time, something powerful happens. The pain becomes less threatening. Not because it disappears, but because you become larger than it. Your awareness expands. Your emotional resilience strengthens. Your sense of identity detaches from the wounded narratives. You no longer define yourself by what hurt you, but by how you chose to meet that hurt. And this is where true freedom begins. Not the kind sold by marketing campaigns. Not the kind based on perfect conditions. But the kind born from radical self-honesty. From owning every inch of your internal landscape without shame. From knowing that no matter what storm arises, you are the eye of it, still, steady, and unshaken. So the next time pain arrives, don't collapse. Don't run. Don't numb. Pause. Breathe. Look it in the eye and say, what are you here to teach me? And listen. Not with fear, but with reverence. Because this is not your punishment. This is your initiation. 2. Radical acceptance. Stop running. We do not suffer because of what happens to us. We suffer because of the way we think about what happens. Epictetus said that over 2,000 years ago, and it's still hauntingly true today. Let's face the truth directly, most of our pain does not come from reality itself. It comes from our inner resistance to that reality. When a relationship ends, what truly hurts is not only that the person left. It's all the thoughts that rush in afterward. I wasn't good enough, I'll always be alone, I was abandoned. These thoughts are the flames. The event is just the spark. Radical acceptance is not passive. It's not resignation or giving up. It's the active choice to stop fighting with life. To stop demanding the world be different so you can be at peace. and instead, to turn inward and meet your own emotional experience as it is, without commentary, without judgment, without escape. This is one of the most courageous things you can do. Don't confuse silence with weakness. Sitting with your emotions without needing to explain them, escape them, or correct them, that's the work of someone who has begun to master the self. Someone who knows that nothing needs to be fixed. It only needs to be fully seen. When you learn to sit with your pain, you discover something radical. It doesn't destroy you. It doesn't devour you like you feared. In fact, it begins to soften. Like a screaming child who finally finds someone willing to sit beside them without trying to fix them. Emotions are the same. They just want space. They want to be felt, not solved. But we are not taught this. We grow up with slogans like, "Stay positive," "Cheer up," "Don't be so emotional." And those words, though well-meaning, train us to abandon ourselves. We learn to push feelings away. We learn to rush through sadness as if lingering too long means failure. In truth, rushing to feel better is the real failure. There is nothing wrong with feeling sad. There is nothing wrong with anger, disappointment, or grief. The only error is in refusing to face them. In denying them, suppressing them, or pretending they don't exist. Radical acceptance is choosing to stop all of that. It is saying to yourself, "I am in pain. And that is real. But I will not run anymore." You can lie in bed, place a hand on your chest, and simply breathe. Don't analyze. Don't judge. Just breathe. And listen to what's living inside of you. Maybe it's childhood loneliness. Maybe it's heartbreak. Maybe it's long-silenced rage. Whatever it is, it needs to be seen. To be honored. Not fixed. That is how healing happens, not by deleting emotion, but by giving it space to breathe. Radical acceptance does not weaken you. It strengthens you. Because it puts you back in control, not of what happens, but of how you meet it. When you stop resisting pain, you stop being ruled by it. You stop reacting. You start observing. And observation is power. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are troubled by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That means you can change the way you see things. You can choose not to fight reality. And in doing so, a deep peace begins to unfold within you. Think back to a moment when you went through intense emotional pain. Maybe a loss, a betrayal, a failure. What truly exhausted you? Was it the event, or the emotional storm you wrapped around it? Radical acceptance is not about pretending you're okay. It's about being radically honest with where you are, and not needing that to be different. That level of self-honesty is the beginning of transformation. From that place, you no longer need to pretend to be strong. You no longer need to force normal. You simply become present with what is real. Even if what's real is, I'm hurting. I'm tired. I'm scared. That truth is worthy of your attention. It's worthy of being held with dignity. Practice breathing with your pain. Practice saying to yourself, this is my emotion. I don't need to escape it. I am strong enough to sit with it. And then, like a wave, those feelings will move through. Not because you defeated them, but because you stopped pushing them away. Radical acceptance is the foundation of inner strength. It's the way you say to life, I may not control what happens, but I will control how I show up for it. And that is enough. More than enough. When you live in this state, you no longer fall into self-blame. You stop asking, why is this happening to me, and start asking, what is this here to show me? That shift, from judgment to curiosity, is everything. You stop reacting from woundedness. You start responding from awareness. You are no longer the frightened child tossed into the chaos of life, heart exposed. You are the adult who has learned to hold yourself, in every storm, in every silence. And you begin to realize, truth doesn't break you. It frees you. 3. Stillness is strength. Silence, in a world addicted to reaction, is the highest expression of inner power. While others rush to defend, to attack, to prove their worth, the one who remains silent holds the real control. You do not need to speak to validate yourself. You do not need to argue to protect your value. And you certainly don't need to explain yourself to deserve respect. What you need, simply, is the right kind of stillness at the right moment. Why? Because in your silence, you reclaim initiative. You are choosing to respond from awareness instead of reacting from impulse. You're not being pulled into the noise, you're standing outside of it, observing. And that is pure strength. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The wise man does not react, because he knows that reaction changes nothing about the nature of things." That's the key. Stillness is not an action. It is intentional action. It is a conscious decision to protect your energy and your dignity. In an argument, the first to go silent is the first to break the cycle of hurt. In a misunderstanding, the one who chooses not to explain is the one who preserves inner clarity. In a room full of noise, the one who does not speak becomes the one everyone listens to. But to arrive here, you must train your mind. You must cultivate a heart mature enough to no longer need to win every exchange. You must override the urge to instantly respond, because not all responses are wise. Sometimes, the pause is the most powerful answer. Ask yourself, how many times in life have you regretted speaking too soon? And how many times have you regretted being silent? The truth is, words spoken in emotional reactivity often betray our wisdom. They expose the most fragile parts of us, the threatened, the insecure, the uncentered. But silence, in the right moment, reveals the strongest part of you, the part that watches, waits, and chooses with clarity. Stillness is discipline. It is the refusal to participate in things that diminish your peace. It is a quiet declaration that says, I don't need to speak to have value. My presence is enough. When you remain silent, you are not bound by other people's expectations. You are not being pulled into their drama. You are choosing to retreat into a space where you can hear your own voice more clearly than their noise. And there, you will discover something profound. You don't need to win arguments. You only need to not lose yourself. Epictetus said, "It's not what others say that disturbs us, it's how we respond to what they say that causes us harm." And in stillness, you are refusing to let others decide your inner weather. You are keeping your power. You are guarding your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Silence can be the refusal of conflict. But it can also be the beginning of awakening. It forces others to stop, to reflect, to confront their own noise. And sometimes, your silence says more than any clever response ever could. Not reacting doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've learned to protect your attention. You've learned that attention is currency, and not everyone or everything deserves it. Think about the last time someone provoked you, and you didn't respond. They waited, they pushed, they tried to pull you in. But you stayed quiet, unmoved. And when you don't move, control shifts. No shouting. No justifying. Just presence. Steady. Silent. Unshakable. Stillness is the art of mental mastery, not through suppression, but through observation. You feel the emotion rise, anger, hurt, betrayal. But you don't let it own you. You watch it. You let it pass, like clouds across the sky, and you remain the sky, vast, untouched, immovable. Success doesn't come from winning every debate. It comes from preserving your peace regardless of the noise around you. And that only becomes possible when you embrace stillness. So next time you're provoked, don't react. Next time you're misunderstood, don't rush to explain. Next time someone tries to pull you into a fight that isn't yours, remember, you can stay silent. And that choice, by itself, is a declaration. That you are not controlled. That you don't need validation. That you are already free, within. 4. Releasing external expectations. Nothing wounds us more deeply than silently expecting others to be different. We don't hurt because people are who they are. We hurt because they refuse to become the image we secretly built of them. That's the quiet tragedy of expectation, a gentle but binding chain forged by unconscious longing. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek our worth outside of ourselves, the approving gaze of a father, the warm embrace of a mother, a teacher's praise, a friend's validation. We grow up believing, if others love me, I must be lovable. But the reverse is also planted deep, if they don't love me, something must be wrong with me. And thus, we become prisoners of our own expectations. In love, we expect our partner to always listen, always be kind, always understand. In family, we expect support and concern. In friendship, we expect loyalty, presence, shared values. But life does not obey the quiet maps we sketch in our minds. Other people have their own wounds, their own limits, their own journeys. They weren't born to play roles in your personal narrative. And it is in that very space, where your wants clash with what is, that suffering is born. Let's be honest. How many times have you felt disappointed by someone simply because they didn't do what you never explicitly asked them to do? How many times have you felt betrayed, when the other person was just being themselves? How many times have you felt unloved, when in reality, you were measuring their care against your internal standard? That pain isn't their fault. It's the weight of your own expectations. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, remind yourself, today you will meet people who are rude, greedy, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and self-centered. But none of them can harm you, unless you allow them to." Expectation is power handed away. When you expect too much, you place your emotional well-being in the hands of others. You are saying, please behave as I wish, so I can feel okay. Not only is that unfair, it's a trap you set for yourself. Letting go of expectations doesn't mean becoming cold, distant, or cynical. It means stopping the inner demand that others live up to the idealized version you carry of them. It means seeing people as they are, flawed, human, limited, and realizing that this clarity is a form of love. And when you can see them as they are, you become free. You're no longer devastated when someone doesn't act how you hoped. You're no longer shattered by natural human differences. You're no longer measuring your worth through the lens of someone else's approval. Because now, you know, your value doesn't depend on being validated. It depends on being clear. And with clarity comes freedom. When you're clear within yourself, when you know who you are, what you need, what you allow, you stop needing others to affirm you. You're not begging for love. You're choosing relationships that align with your principles. That's quiet power. The freedom to love without clinging. To give without demanding. To show up without needing to possess. Because you no longer build your self-respect on the fragile foundation of external expectations. Yes, you'll still feel. You'll still hurt when someone leaves or fails you. But that pain won't define you. It won't shatter you. Because you no longer equate their behavior with your value. You no longer think, they didn't choose me, so I must be unworthy. You now say, they didn't choose me, so they're not aligned with my life, and that's okay. And that shift changes everything. Epictetus said, don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Hope that they will turn out exactly as they do, and you will find peace. That's the key. Letting go of expectations doesn't mean giving up on desire. It means letting go of attachment to the outcome. You still love, still trust, still try. But your inner stability is no longer tied to whether others respond as you wished. You no longer say, I'll be at peace when they understand me. You now say, I am at peace because I've stopped needing their understanding. And that is emotional maturity. From this space, you begin to move more lightly through life. You connect more deeply. You love more honestly. Not because you love less, but because you love more clearly. You no longer expect your parents to always understand you. You begin to see that they, too, are learning how to be parents. You no longer expect your partner to heal the past for you. You begin to do that work yourself. You no longer expect your friends to never fail you. You let them be who they are, and you choose to stay or go from a place of self-awareness, not bitterness. And in that letting go, something beautiful happens. You become free. Free from manipulating others to feel loved. Free from anger when your expectations fall apart. Free from imaginary conversations in your head where you're always trying to explain, convince, or be seen. You stop needing the approving gaze. Because you've already looked at yourself long enough to know, I am enough. Without condition. That is the deepest kind of peace. Not when others do what you want, but when you no longer need them to. 5. Turning wounds into inner walls. No one walks through life untouched by pain. But while some let wounds fester, others transform them into thicker skin. Some carry pain as a burden, others use it as brick and mortar for inner fortresses. The question is not, why was I hurt? The real question is, what will I do with the hurt? Every betrayal, disappointment, abandonment, and misunderstanding is an opportunity to activate your emotional immune system. Not to make you colder, but to make you clearer. Not to stop you from loving, but to help you love with discernment and healthy limits. Pain is data. It's valuable feedback that life offers to show you where your trust was misplaced, where your boundaries were too loose, or where you're repeating unconscious patterns. But if you simply react to pain without reflecting on it, you'll find yourself stuck in the same suffering, again and again, wearing different faces. Acknowledgement is the first step. When you hurt, don't rush to escape it. Write it down. Name what exactly hurt you. Don't just say, they hurt me. Ask yourself, why did that cut so deep? Perhaps it touches an old wound. Perhaps it awakens a childhood fear of abandonment. Naming the emotion and its root brings consciousness into the shadows. Then comes reflection. This is when you ask yourself, where did I place my trust? What did I give away that I should have protected? Where were my boundaries, and how did I let them be crossed? Reflection isn't about blame, it's about reclaiming authorship. It shifts you from victimhood into sovereignty. Finally, distill the lesson into a life principle. Turn emotion into structure. Turn pain into a rule of conduct. For example, if someone took advantage of your kindness, your principle might become, I give from fullness, not from emptiness. I stop giving when I start feeling depleted. If silence hurt you deeply, your principle might be, I value open, clear communication. I step away from people who consistently refuse it. If you were betrayed, you might form this rule, I build trust slowly, not from a hunger to be loved but from proven behavior over time. Each principle becomes a brick in your inner wall. Not to keep people out, but to ensure that only those who are worthy walk through. Inner walls are not prisons. They are structures of maturity. They show that you've integrated your past rather than being defined by it. They are how you say to life, I can't control who hurts me, but I can control how I grow from it. Stoicism is not emotional numbness. It's emotional alchemy, the power to convert feeling into wisdom. When you set boundaries, recognize patterns, and extract principles, you begin to live with a special kind of freedom, the freedom from needing others to behave a certain way for you to feel okay. Pain, when processed properly, leads to a deeper dimension of existence. A place where trust is no longer blind, love no longer codependent, and peace no longer conditional on who stays or who leaves. You are not weak because you once trusted poorly. You are only weak if you keep repeating it after you know better. But when you pause, review, and adjust, you are building. And every crack becomes a channel for light. Every loss becomes a lesson. Every betrayal becomes a compass. Every misjudged connection becomes a filter for the next. You stop being the product of your wounds. You become the architect of your inner structure, forged from them. No one can do this work for you. No one can heal you in your place. You must rise from the ground where you once collapsed. You must write new laws for your inner world. And you must live them, not once, but consistently. Inner walls are not built with promises. They are built with patterns. Every time you say, no, when you used to say, yes, that's a brick. Every time you don't reply to someone who cost you your peace, that's a brick. Every time you stop blaming and instead journal your triggers, that's a brick. And slowly, you'll stand in the world, still soft, still feeling, but no longer fragile. Because now you have a foundation. You have structure. And you know this truth, You don't need to avoid pain to become strong. You just need to learn well from it. 6. The power of emotional minimalism. The less you react, the more you are free. This isn't just a clever phrase, it's a guiding principle, a philosophy for preserving inner peace in an emotionally overstimulated world. In an era where everything demands your reaction, fast, loud, immediate, the one who can restrain their emotions holds the highest form of power. Emotional minimalism doesn't mean suppressing emotions, ignoring life, or becoming indifferent. It means knowing exactly what deserves your emotional attention, and what doesn't. It's the art of reduction, cutting off unnecessary drainage, reclaiming your emotional energy from what has no real value. Think of your emotions as a finite resource. Every day, you only have so much mental energy to invest. If you spend it on being angry at strangers online, jealous of someone else's success, arguing with people who refuse to understand, or worrying about things beyond your control, by the end of the day, you'll have nothing left for what truly matters: your peace, your creativity, your mindful love. The Stoics teach, we don't suffer from events themselves, but from our reactions to them. That's why the wise don't waste time trying to control the world. They train themselves to control how they respond. That is the essence of emotional minimalism. You don't need to add more to your life. You simply subtract what doesn't serve. Confucius once said, "Do not be angry with those who don't understand you. Do not worry over what you do not yet understand." This is the root of calm, letting go of what's irrelevant, and making room for what's deeper. Emotional minimalism begins with awareness. Is this worth getting upset over? Is this person worthy of my anger? Will this argument elevate or drain my dignity and direction? If the answer is no, you are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to not react. Not reacting is not weakness, it's power. It means you are strong enough to choose. No one can force you to feel anything, unless you let them. And from that space, true freedom is born. Emotional minimalism is also deeply grounded in the truth of impermanence. Buddhism reminds us, everything passes. Joy, sorrow, success, failure, arrivals, departures, all of it is temporary. So why should you give your whole heart to clinging to what is only a passing moment? Why let short-term chaos determine the tone of your entire being? When you understand impermanence, you begin to pause before reacting. You realize, this anger will pass. This sadness will soften. This person will change. This situation is not fixed. And in that awareness, you become still within the storm. Emotional minimalism isn't about rejecting life. It's about living more deeply with what truly matters. You no longer waste your spirit on 100 meaningless distractions. You give your full presence to the 3 or 4 things that truly shape your being: what you love, what you choose, and what nourishes you. Take an honest look at a day in your life. How much of your energy is spent reacting to pointless messages, strange glances, vague words? How much of your mind is consumed by things you cannot influence? How many emotions are wasted on petty comparisons, imagined slights, or ego wounds? Emotional minimalism doesn't ask you to become a monk. It simply invites you to be more selective, choose what you care about, who you believe, when to speak, and when to release. It doesn't kill emotion. It refines it. You begin to understand, peace doesn't come from everything being right. Peace comes from not needing to react to everything that's wrong. You begin to value quietude, the inner space where you don't have to overthink, over-explain, or prove anything. That stillness becomes your sanctuary. It's where you recharge, reconnect, and hear the authentic voice beneath all the noise. And then you realize, the less you react, the more room you have to live with integrity. The less you waste, the more you have to build. The less you cling, the closer you move to inner freedom. Emotional minimalism isn't a trend. It's a quiet revolution. It happens silently, choice by choice. Every time you don't text back someone who drained your soul, that's emotional minimalism. Every time you mute the noise and focus on your craft, that's emotional minimalism. Every time you see a critic and choose to say nothing, that's emotional minimalism. It's in these moments that you reclaim your sovereignty. You remember, reaction is instinct, but restraint is mastery. And in today's world, emotional restraint is the highest form of authority, one no one can take from you, unless you give it away. 7. Rebuilding trust in yourself. Some wounds don't bleed, but they silently erode your trust, in life, in others, and most dangerously, in yourself. When someone betrays you, leaves you, or makes you feel unworthy, you don't just lose them, you often lose a deep inner trust that once allowed you to walk through life with confidence. And the greatest loss isn't trust in others. It's the crumbling of the belief that you can rely on yourself. You start to question, was I too naive? Too weak? Too trusting? Did I deserve what happened to me? Left unexamined, these questions don't bring clarity. They become the roots of harsh self-judgment, emotional contraction, and inner defenses that suffocate your ability to live fully. But here's the truth, trust, even when shattered, can be rebuilt. And this time, it doesn't need to be a vine clinging to someone else's wall. It becomes a pillar you build within yourself. The first step is to redefine the foundation. Where does my worth come from? If you've based your worth on being loved, chosen, or approved of, then you've been living on shaky ground. Because that depends on the unpredictable behaviors of others. You must shift that narrative. Your worth doesn't come from being recognized. It comes from being aligned. Aligned with your truth, your principles, your integrity. You rebuild trust not through external validation, but through daily inner congruence. Second, reset your boundaries. Pain often comes from not knowing, or not defending, your limits. You let people enter sacred spaces in your life that should have been earned. You turn kindness into overextension. You confused openness with exposure. And when it all collapses, you blame the world, forgetting that you never drew the line. Rebuilding trust means learning to say no without guilt. It means no longer over-explaining. It means refusing to let anyone touch your value unless they've shown themselves to be safe and worthy. Third, redefine the concept of a safe relationship. After pain, you must raise your standards. No more loving from loneliness. No more connecting from lack. No more keeping those who make you feel like you have to earn love by proving your worth every day. A safe relationship does not make you question your worth. It does not demand constant justification of your value. It is a space where you can be fully yourself, loved, respected, and heard. This reconstruction also requires a quiet but vital practice, building the inner pillar. Imagine your mind as a house. If all the weight is held up by outer walls, other people, circumstances, outcomes, then when those collapse, your house crumbles. But if there is a strong central pillar, self-knowledge, core values, non-negotiable principles, then no matter what falls away on the outside, you remain standing. This inner pillar is built through daily rituals, journaling to track your emotional truth, meditating to observe your mind, reminding yourself each morning, I don't need anyone to validate my worth, I already know it. The pillar is not a declaration. It is a structure you live by. A mental architecture that releases you from dependency. The Stoics teach, if you live to please others, you'll always be their slave. But if you live by reason and principle, you'll be free, even in prison. This is the blueprint for rebuilding trust in yourself. Shift the axis from them to you. From outcomes to alignment. From approval to discipline. You begin to choose again, who you allow into your sacred space, what boundaries are non-negotiable, what nurtures your peace. You no longer trust recklessly, but you don't shut down either. You open with discernment. And your condition is this, I will not betray myself just to be accepted. Rebuilding trust is a slow rebirth. There will be days you still doubt. Moments when you want to go back to old patterns, seeking reassurance, hoping someone else will make it make sense. But you'll remember, the first person who must understand you, is you. And when you truly understand yourself, you no longer need to be understood. You no longer wait to be chosen. Because you have already chosen yourself. 8. Emotional independence, becoming immune to manipulation. True freedom doesn't begin with where you live, how much money you have, or who loves you. It begins the moment you stop needing to be loved in order to feel worthy. When you can love deeply, without fear of whether it's reciprocated. When you no longer need someone to hold on to you just to feel whole. That is emotional independence. A person who no longer needs affection to survive is not cold or detached. They are someone who gives love as a conscious act, not as a subconscious negotiation for validation. They love because they choose to, not because they need to. And in that, they become immune to emotional manipulation. Because all manipulation begins with dependency. When you need someone's praise, acceptance, or attention, they can use that to control you. Only when you step out of the need can you step into the choice. Stoic philosophy calls this apatheia, a state of equanimity, not because emotions are dead, but because they no longer dominate you. A Stoic does not avoid love, sadness, or pain. They simply refuse to be ruled by it. Epictetus said, "When you expect others to behave a certain way, you hand over control of your mind to them." And that's what we do, every day. We hand people the keys to our emotional well-being, then resent them when they hurt us. We let others decide whether we feel good, confident, worthy, or loved. Emotional independence is the act of taking back those keys. It is the inner decision to say, "I will love without attachment. I will trust without dependence. I will give without needing anything in return." Because your value doesn't change, no matter who stays or who leaves. In Buddhism, this concept mirrors the principle of non-attachment. When you love without clinging, you no longer suffer. You can hold a flower, knowing it will wilt. You can love a person, knowing they may leave. You still love, but without grasping, demanding, or turning them into the foundation of your identity. Emotionally independent people are not those who walk alone, but those who never lose themselves when they're with someone else. They don't perform or wear masks to be accepted. They don't overthink, overgive, or overchase to maintain someone's affection. Because they know, if you must betray yourself to keep someone, what you're keeping isn't love, it's fear in disguise. And the truth is this: love cannot grow from fear. It only flourishes in the soil of freedom. Emotionally independent individuals enter relationships not to be rescued, but to share a journey. They don't expect the other person to fill their emptiness, they simply invite them to walk beside it. They don't need love to survive. Love, to them, is a gift, not a lifeline. When you reach this state, you're no longer easily manipulated by silence, distance, or withdrawal. You no longer beg, explain, or compromise your dignity. You can grieve, but you don't collapse. You can long, but you don't lose yourself. You love someone, but you stand with yourself first. This independence doesn't come from denying emotion, it comes from understanding it. Every time you feel, "I need this person to be okay," pause and ask, what part of me feels empty that I'm trying to fill through them? Almost always, the answer is, I lack inner safety. But what you really need isn't them. It's the version of you that feels safe inside yourself. That version won't reject love, but won't shatter if it ends. The journey toward emotional independence is a journey of returning home to yourself. It's when someone's departure no longer feels like loss, but like purification. It's when you no longer demand permanence, but presence. When you choose relationships based on shared values, not on fear of loneliness. The person who no longer needs to be loved in order to live, is the one who can love fully, yet remain sovereign. And that is the highest form of freedom. 9. When silence becomes a statement. Some things lose value the more they're explained. Some conversations drain the soul the longer they continue. Some people, no matter how much you try to help them understand, only pull you further from your own center. And there comes a moment when you must choose silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've said enough. At that moment, silence becomes your final statement, powerful, decisive, and beyond argument. In a world obsessed with noise, where everyone scrambles to respond, explain, defend, or prove, the one who remains silent at the right moment is the one who holds the deepest power. They are not pulled into the emotional chaos of others. They don't allow outer instability to hijack their inner calm. They choose not to react, because they have chosen peace over dominance. Silence, when born of awareness, is an art. It is the most elegant form of refusal. I will not dance this toxic dance. I am stepping off the board. When someone demands endless explanations, tries to pull you into games of guilt or control, silence becomes your boundary. It says, I will not waste my energy here. And therefore, I am free. Stoic philosophy upholds self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You can maintain your serenity if you stop arguing with people who are incapable of understanding." It is a reminder, you are not responsible for healing others through your words. You are not obligated to explain yourself to the stubborn. You are not required to maintain every connection at all costs. In those moments, silence is the voice of wisdom. Some things can only be protected by not saying another word. In Eastern philosophy, especially in Zen and Buddhist traditions, silence is central. Not as avoidance, but as transcendence. It's not suppression of self, but freedom from the need to assert the ego. When you can sit in the presence of false accusations or ignorance without the need to shout back, it's not weakness, it's strength beyond injury. When you can leave without causing harm, that is compassion at its highest form. Silence, when used with intention, is also a declaration of self-respect. You don't need to speak to be understood. You don't need to be present to be remembered. You don't need to argue to prove you're right. Because you already know your value. And that's why you can walk away, not as a victim, but as someone deeply awake. The right absence becomes a statement, I am not here to beg for affection. I will not stay out of fear of loss. I leave not because I am weak, but because I choose to keep my heart intact. That kind of withdrawal needs no dramatic ending. It happens quietly, but it echoes with the power of thunder. Remember this: you don't need to be everywhere to be seen. You don't need to speak in every room to be respected. Some of your greatest value will only shine when it is held in stillness. Some of your deepest presence will only be felt in your absence. The less you need to be noticed, the more free you become. Silence is also healing. When you stop speaking, you start hearing the true voice within. You no longer react impulsively to provocation, misunderstanding, or rejection. You observe. You recognize. And then, you choose your response. Or you choose not to respond at all. That is the deepest level of emotional discipline, when no one outside you can regulate your inner peace. Silence is a way of honoring yourself. You do not need to defend, justify, or protect your value with arguments. Your worth is not carried by your explanations, it is lived through your presence, your consistency, your energy. And eventually, people feel it. Your silence speaks more than 1,000 words. It doesn't shout, but it causes reflection. It doesn't demand respect, but it commands it. And if some still don't understand, so be it. Because your clarity does not depend on external agreement. You've reached a place where you no longer need to close the loop with one last conversation. Where you can leave without needing goodbye. Where you understand that sometimes, the most dignified thing you can do, for them and for yourself, is to say nothing at all, and walk away from what no longer deserves your presence. That is not avoidance. It is the statement of someone mature enough to say, I will not lose myself just to hold on to anything. 10. Closing with power, opening a new journey. Not every ending is a loss. Some endings are simply punctuation marks, pauses before a new chapter begins. A chapter where you are no longer your old self. No longer trapped in old emotional loops. No longer confusing kindness with weakness. No longer placing your worth in the hands of those unequipped to hold it. An ending, if you choose it consciously, can become a rite of passage. The moment you look into the mirror and see a new version of yourself beginning to take shape, not a victim, not someone running away, but someone standing in the wreckage with eyes wide open and a heart that refuses to close. Stoic philosophy doesn't promise a life without pain. But it hands you a powerful tool, the authority over your response. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Life can take everything from you. But you always retain your ability to choose dignity, reason, and calm." And it is precisely in moments of ending that this truth becomes clearest. When everything external falls apart, a relationship, a belief, a dream, you discover which part of you is real, unshakable, and untouchable. To close something is not to retreat. It is to choose. To say, I have learned what I needed to learn. I gave all I could give. And now, I return to myself, not with bitterness, not with regret, not with fear. This is not denial. It is clarity. You no longer use the past as a justification for old patterns. Instead, you transform the wound into a foundation for rebirth. Because every time you close an old chapter, you open the door for a new self to emerge. A self that no longer needs saving. A self that knows how to hold itself. A self grounded in principle, boundaries, and quiet compassion, yet unwilling to compromise for what is unworthy. Endings don't need to be beautiful. They only need to be real. Real in their grief. Real in their exhaustion. Real in the recognition that there's nothing left to hold on to. And in that rawness, a new space opens. A space for beginning. A space for growth without drama. A space for dignity to rise from what was once broken. The Stoics never asked us to be cold. They asked us to be unshakable. And unshakable doesn't mean never falling. It means standing again each time you fall, without carrying the debris of the past. You keep the lesson. You release the rest. You convert experience into principle. Memory into wisdom. And then, you move forward. Without applause. Without needing to be understood. Without waiting for others to validate that you've changed. Because you know you're no longer who you were. And that is enough. Closing a chapter is leaving the familiar. Not because someone forced you, but because you've outgrown it. It's when you no longer seek comfort in what wounded you. When you stop looking back for rescue, and start looking inward for strength. When you stop blaming, and start building. This is not an ending. It is a rebirth. A sacred dismantling of the old so something deeper, wiser, stronger can emerge. You no longer live to survive, but to walk with direction, depth, and the quiet confidence of someone who has lost, but never lost themselves. You'll come to see, the very things that once broke you, now hold the blueprint of your strength. The people who hurt you, became unwilling teachers of your inner safety. The pain you thought you'd never move through, became the gate to a dignified becoming. You don't need to forget. You only need to close, fully, peacefully, and finally. Because what's waiting for you ahead is not repetition, it's a new journey. One where you no longer ask permission to be yourself. One where you live unapologetically anchored in strength, silence, and clarity. And if you need one sentence to carry with you through this next chapter, let it be Epictetus' timeless reminder. It's not what happens to you that defines you. It's how you respond that determines who you become. In the end, life doesn't need you to be perfect. It only asks that you stop betraying yourself, once and for all. If this video awakens something in you, let it be a beginning. A new chapter. A quiet vow to yourself, I will no longer let the world define my worth. From this moment forward, I live by principle, not by pain. Stay strong. Stay rooted. Stay free. Until next time.